Dash dash dash. The Texas night had a way of swallowing sound, of making a man believe the whole earth had gone to sleep except for him and his thoughts. Luke McAllister knew that silence better than most. He had lived alone on this ranch for years, just him, his horses, and the wide plains that stretched until they kissed the horizon. Nights like this, he would usually be in the barn with his lantern, checking the stalls, running a calloused hand along the warm hides of the horses that were his only companions. But tonight was different. He heard it first as a whisper in the wind, faint, broken, almost too fragile to believe. A sob. It was not the cry of an animal, nor the moan of the coyotes that sometimes prowled near the fence line. This was human, soft, raw, the kind of sound that pierced a man straight through the chest. Luke froze where he stood, one hand resting on the stall door, the lantern casting a golden pool around his boots. His heart thudded hard. Out here, miles from town, no one just wandered by, not at night, not without reason. He tilted his head, listening again. There it was, clearer this time, floating through the dark like a wounded spirit. A sob, a weeping that rose and broke, then died into silence. Cautiously, he set down the lantern and grabbed his Winchester rifle from the hook on the barn wall. Trouble didn't usually come his way, but when it did, it came with teeth. He stepped out into the open night, boots crunching against the gravel, eyes scanning the stretch of pasture that lay quiet beneath the pale wash of the moon. The crying came again, and now it was unmistakable. It was close, too close. Luke tightened his grip on the rifle and moved toward the fence line. The prairie grass shifted in the breeze, tall blades whispering against each other. His ranch dog, Jasper, trotted at his heels, ears pricked, body tense, sensing his master's unease. And then he saw her. She was crumpled near the edge of the wooden fence, her body curled into itself as though she could disappear into the earth if she pressed hard enough. Barefoot, her dress torn in jagged strips, streaked with dirt and blood. Her long hair hung in tangled ropes across her face, and even in the dim moonlight, Luke could see the trembling of her shoulders as she wept. For a long moment, Luke stood rooted, his chest tightening. He had seen injured strays on his land before, seen horses collapse from exhaustion, but never this, never a woman, broken and abandoned, sobbing as though her soul itself had shattered. Miss. His voice came out low, careful, the way he spoke to frightened colts. He lowered his rifle, not wanting the sight of it to add to her fear. She flinched at the sound, jerking her head up, eyes wide and wild like a deer caught in a snare. The lantern's faint glow revealed her face, bruises blotched across her cheek and jaw, lips split, eyes swollen from crying. She looked at him not with relief, but with terror, as though he were just another shadow sent to harm her. Luke took a slow step forward, raising one hand in peace. "It's all right. I won't hurt you." Her cracked lips parted, and what came out made his stomach turn to ice. "I'm not clean anymore," she whispered, then louder, broken, weeping. "I'm not clean anymore, don't look at me." The words hit him like a gunshot. He had heard them before, years ago, when news spread of a girl from town who had been taken by outlaws, then returned days later, too ashamed to show her face. He remembered how the townsfolk had whispered behind her back, how her family had moved away in shame. Those 4 words carried more weight than bullets. Luke's blood ran cold, his gut twisting with a fury he hadn't felt in years. Whatever this girl had endured, it was something no person should ever face. And here she was, crumpled in the dirt on his land, drowning in shame that wasn't hers to carry. He lowered himself onto one knee, careful not to get too close, his lantern casting a trembling circle of light between them. "Miss," he said softly, steady as a rock in a storm, "whatever happened to you, it don't make you less. Not here. Not to me." Her eyes flashed with anguish, tears streaking through the dirt on her cheeks. She shook her head violently, clutching her arms tight across her chest. "You don't understand. They took me, they broke me, I can't be." Her voice cracked into sobs so fierce she couldn't finish. Luke swallowed hard, his throat tight with anger he kept buried deep. The urge to demand names, to ask where, to hunt down the devils who had done this, burned in him like fire. But he pushed it down. That wasn't what she needed right now. What she needed was something no bullet could deliver: safety. He glanced around the darkness, every shadow seeming to crawl with menace. Whoever had done this might still be out there. He couldn't risk leaving her exposed. "Come on," he said gently, holding out a hand but not forcing it. Let's get you inside, out of this cold. You're safe now. You hear me? Safe. She looked at his hand as if it were a snake waiting to strike. Her chest rose and fell in ragged bursts, her whole body trembling. Then, hesitantly, like a cornered animal testing escape, she let her fingers brush against his. Luke closed his hand around hers, steady and warm, guiding her carefully to her feet. She stumbled, nearly collapsing, but he caught her with an arm around her shoulders. The smell of smoke and sweat and fear clung to her, but beneath it all, she smelled like life, fragile, desperate life. She clung to his shirt as he half carried her toward the ranch house. Her head rested against his chest, and through the fabric she whispered again, broken and hollow, "I'm not clean anymore." Luke's jaw clenched, his teeth grinding against the rage boiling inside. He looked out across the silent plains, lantern swinging, rifle slung across his back. Whoever had left this girl broken thought they had destroyed her spirit. But Luke McAllister knew better. She was still breathing, still standing, and on his land, she would never be abandoned again. He tightened his hold on her, whispering low, almost like a vow, "You're safe now. No matter what they did, you're safe." The night stretched wide and watchful around them, the wind carrying the girl's sobs away into the dark. Luke walked on, carrying not just her weight, but the unspoken promise that he would stand between her and the world that had tried to destroy her. And though he didn't yet know her name, he knew one thing for certain: whatever nightmare she had escaped, it had just crossed into the wrong man's land. The ranch house smelled faintly of wood smoke and old pine. Luke shouldered the door open with a creak and guided the young woman inside, his arm still around her trembling frame. She seemed so weightless, as if she'd been hollowed out by whatever had happened. The fire he had left smoldering in the stone hearth earlier was now only glowing embers. With practiced ease, he bent down, tossed on kindling, and breathed life into the flames. Soon, golden warmth filled the room, pushing back the chill of the night. The girl sat slumped in his old leather armchair, wrapped in the wool blanket he had pulled from the cedar chest. The blanket seemed to swallow her, but still, she shivered. Her bare feet peeked out beneath the fabric, scraped raw, the skin broken and stained with dried blood. Luke poured her a cup of water from the jug on the counter. When he offered it, her hands shook so violently the tin cup clattered against her teeth, spilling half the contents onto the floorboards. He crouched in front of her, steadying her fingers with his own rough, calloused hands. "Easy now. Take it slow." She swallowed a few sips, then lowered the cup, her breaths ragged. Her eyes, wide, glassy, rimmed red, met his for the briefest moment before darting away. Silence stretched between them, heavy, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Luke gave her space. He knew better than to press. A horse bolted if cornered, and this woman was no different. At last, her lips parted, trembling as if the words themselves were knives she had to force out. They took me." Her voice was a rasp, like dry leaves scraping over stone. Luke's grip on his knee tightened. The muscles in his jaw flexed, but he stayed quiet, letting her speak at her own pace. "I tried to fight," she whispered, tears brimming again. "I screamed. I clawed at them. But there were too many." Her voice cracked into a sob, and she pressed her fists hard against her chest, as if trying to crush the shame inside her. "I'm not clean anymore. They ruined me." Her words fell heavy, like stones hitting water, rippling through Luke's chest until they struck the very core of him. He felt rage coil inside, white-hot and merciless, his mind already painting pictures of faceless devils that dared put their hands on her. The urge to saddle his horse, to track them down with his Winchester and bring justice the old way, burned through him like wildfire. But he looked at her, this broken, trembling girl who sat hunched in his chair like she might collapse into ash, and he knew his fury wasn't what she needed right now. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice low, steady, firm as steel. "Listen to me. You are not what they did to you. Do you hear me? You're still you. You're still whole." Her eyes flickered to his, filled with disbelief, as though she couldn't imagine anyone saying such words and meaning them. Luke's hand hovered for a moment, then rested lightly on her arm, grounding her. "What they did was evil. It says nothing about you, and everything about them. And as long as I'm standing, no one will hurt you again." Her sobs slowed, not vanishing, but softening into shaky breaths. She stared at him, her expression torn between mistrust and the faintest glimmer of hope, like a candle guttering in a storm. You don't know, she murmured, shaking her head weakly. You don't know what it feels like. To be used up. To be dirty. To not belong anywhere anymore. Luke swallowed, his throat thick. He thought of his sister, long buried, who'd once told him something similar after being beaten by her husband. He had been too late to save her then. But this time he wasn't too late. You belong here, he said firmly. Right here, right now. And you're not dirty. You're hurt. Hurt can heal. Her gaze wavered, and tears spilled fresh down her cheeks, though quieter this time. She didn't believe him, not fully, but a part of her wanted to. That was enough. Luke rose and fetched a basin of warm water. He knelt again, dipping a rag, and without asking, he gently began to clean the dirt and blood from her scraped feet. She flinched at first, pulling back, but when she saw his careful hands, rough from ranch work, yet impossibly gentle, she let him. He worked in silence, the fire painting gold across the lines of his weathered face. Each stroke of the cloth was deliberate, reverent, as though he were tending to something sacred. When he finished, he wrapped her feet in strips of clean cloth and set the basin aside. She stared at him, her lips parted, as though she didn't know how to make sense of what he'd just done. No man had ever treated her with such care, especially not after what had been taken from her. Why? She whispered. Luke looked at her, his gaze steady as the plains. Because you deserve it. Because you're still worth protectin'. Worth savin'. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters, carrying with it the distant cry of coyotes. Luke's instincts prickled. Evil like the kind that had broken her didn't just vanish into the night. If she had escaped, someone might come looking. He stood, pulling his shotgun from the rack by the door. The weight of it was familiar, a comfort. He checked the shells, then leaned it against the wall within easy reach. His eyes swept the windows, the shadows outside pressing close, restless. The girl's voice wavered from behind him. You don't have to do this for me. You don't even know my name. Luke turned, his silhouette framed by firelight. Names can come later. Right now, all I need to know is that you're under my roof. And that makes you my responsibility. Her chin trembled, but she said nothing. Instead, she pulled the blanket tighter around herself, the first traces of warmth seeping back into her pale face. Luke settled into the chair by the door, shotgun across his lap. Jasper, his dog, curled at his feet, ears twitching at every sound. Luke's gaze never wavered from the window, the flames casting shadows across his stern features. The girl drifted into a fitful sleep at last, her breathing uneven, but no longer torn by sobs. Luke stayed awake, keeping watch, listening to the night. His thoughts were a storm, rage at the faceless men who had shattered her, grief for her pain, and a vow that burned deeper than any fire. Whatever devils had done this, they had just stumbled into the wrong rancher's land. And if they came back to finish what they started, they would meet a wall of iron and lead, and a man who would not hesitate to protect what had been placed in his care. Luke tightened his grip on the shotgun, his eyes hard, unblinking. The girl might believe she was no longer clean. But to him, she was something far rarer, someone worth saving, someone whose brokenness did not make her less, but more. And God help the men who had tried to break her.